This is an audio commentary. The Corporation for Public Broadcasting announced this week that it was winding down operations, essentially shuttering its doors and going away. The reason, as Time magazine reports, is a $1.1 billion cut in funding for the nonprofit agency that has been a chief backer of public stations and networks like NPR and PBS. The CPB has been an important element of American media landscape since being created by the Public Broadcasting Act of 1967 as a nonpartisan nonprofit nonprofit to channel federal appropriations to public television and radio stations across the United States, as Time reports. It has provided an alternative to the for-profit stations and conglomerates who rule the airwaves and now the internet, corporate behemoths that are more concerned with their bottom line than providing independent news. Republicans in Congress have been targeting CPB for years or decades, accusing it of bias. The stations are too liberal, they say, too critical, but they conflate independence with bias. And as the Republican and conservative movements have moved farther and farther right, they have sought to remake media into a thinly veiled propaganda industry a la Fox News. A free press is essential for a functioning democracy and for well-functioning and well-run governments. It is essential for maintaining an intelligent, thoughtful, and engaged populace, especially in a moment like now when we are inundated with falsehoods and public grift. Public grift from our elected officials. Bullying lawsuits and direct calls for violence against journalists. Sorry about that. Most of this is not new. Presidents and Congresses of both parties have had contentious relationships with the media, but the scope and degree have changed, and it is coming at a moment when corporate appetite for independence has disappeared. Jeff Bezos' decision to cancel an already written endorsement of Kamala Harris last year, essentially changing the Washington Post rules in midstream, and the LA Times owner, Patrick Soon-Shiong, doing the same thing, were dangerous. I've been a critic of candidate endorsements for a long time now, and I remain critical of them. But the timing of these decisions at the height of a presidential race, rather than before anything started, were not about principle at all. They were about power and bending the knee in case Trump were to prevail. The damage done to both news brands was extensive, and they only legitimized in advance the kind of anti-press actions that would be taken by the new Trump team, which included efforts to remove major mainstream news outlets from presidential pressers in favor of partisan outlets and bloggers, lawsuits against CBS, the Wall Street Journal, and others. Trump is being far more aggressive than any of his predecessors, though his playbook is not new. Ronald Reagan, read Mark Hertsgaard's Bending the Knee, erected a massive propaganda machine designed not just to control his message, but to impose it on a compliant media. The second Bush administration talked about creating their own reality and then stage-managed coverage of the Iraq War by limiting access to reporters, an approach that Israel is using in Gaza, where foreign press only gains access when embedding with the IDF. As CNN's Jerusalem correspondent Jeremy Diamond told Haaretz this week, our fundamental task as journalists is to report what we see and what we hear. It's one of the things that I teach and have practiced over much of my adult life, though obviously not a foreign correspondent. Our job, he added, is to be on the ground, even when it is dangerous, perhaps especially when it's dangerous. The Israeli public, like the American one, is not getting what it needs from much of its media, he said. Israelis deserve to have the full and accurate and complete picture inside of Gaza, what is happening there from sources that they trust, from news organizations that they recognize. And it's essential in a country that says that it upholds democratic ideals, in a country that touts itself as the only democracy in the Middle East. If, as Diamond says, and I believe, journalism is core to any democracy, then constricting journalism, attacking it, and attempting to undermine it should force us to ask what kind of democracy we actually have. The loss of the Corporation for Public Broadcasting is just the latest assault on press freedoms in the United States and around the globe.